Okay, so hello to everyone. My speech will be about managing the complexities in regional development and the dimension of SMART. Because we have done some research on the smart development of social system recently. And it's quite a popular buzzword. It became like this in the past few years. So we're really trying to look into what it actually is and how we can profit from that when you think about regional and national development. I think most of you have heard about all these smart fridges, smart cars, and everything smart, yes? Now we hear about smart specialization and smart development and things like this in the social system. The concept itself was born out of the technical system, smartness of technical system. What is it? Usually when we look at it, it is about, as they say, about closed loop control, about energy efficiency, and about networks. Can we apply the same kind of thinking to the social system and to the region? If we think about the development of social system. So, the closed loop control, it means that we have a closed loop which is self-adjusting to itself. In the context of regional development, that will mean the continuous collective learning. It's the region which is learning from its mistakes, from its best practices, which is trying to avoid the vicious circle, užburto rato išvengimas, to turn it into the virtuous circle and to always upgrade itself. Then we look at the effective use of energy, effective use of resources. It means we try to leverage different solutions. And then we have the third thing, networking capabilities. We try to connect our region to the best regions to offer what we have, at least something good what we have in our region, so that we can learn. We try to adopt good practices. I try to look from the negative side to this smart development. First of all, there are many, many constraints which we have in our development. We are here in Šiauliai, I'm coming from Kaunas, and we can always mention the black side of our environment. We say that we have a shortage of labor, a shortage of money, limitations of human potential, etc. But when we look at the many international practices of development, what we can see here, you see a lot of different flags from different countries. It was Michael Porter who said once, there is a selective factor disadvantage, he had this term for development. What does that mean? He said that there are many situations when we can turn our limitations into our opportunities. If we look, for example, at Swiss case, yes? Switzerland has an extreme shortage of labor once in their history. It moved into higher value-added production, slowly but surely. If you look at the expensive labor of Scandinavian countries, it was a huge incentive to automize the production, to move into the technology sectors, to avoid the highly expensive labor. If you look at Israel, the Jewish success story, Israeli success story, throughout the history, Jews were not allowed to own agricultural land in places where they lived, including Lithuania. What they started specializing in financial services, in all different kinds of service sectors, which used much higher value-added production. If you look at Japan, lots of earthquakes, population density. We have competitiveness in areas which are addressing these kind of limitations. So, when I was thinking about this smart development, I tried to structure my thinking along the two different dimensions. How good is our governance, meaning here, are we strong or are we weak in our governance? And how many economic resources we have in our country? Are we poor or are we rich? And as we look at many of the well-developed countries, they have the situation of self-sustainability. They have built a strong economy, they invest into higher education, and they developed quite often by themselves. But quite often, at the wrong side, they have the welfare trap. If you look at many Scandinavian countries, United States, sometimes there is a welfare situation which is not very favorable. When you look at the many poor countries, let's say in Africa, you have the situation of weak governance and poor resources, and you have the poverty trap, a vicious circle of poverty always happening. When you look at some countries of Latin America, for example, you have very rich countries in natural resources, and you have a very corrupt, weak governance. You have a state capture, lots of oligarchy, and you have what the economists call resource curse, prakeikimas išteklių. But when we look at our countries, like Lithuania, like Slovenia, like many Central East European countries, we are usually falling into this, I would say, situation, where we have not many resources, but where we have to be really smart in our governance. We really need to have a good governance to avoid our lack of at least natural resources. We have people as our main resource. And we have to, I call this situation the smart leveraging. Leveraging means in Lithuanian svertas, leverage. We always have to think about what leverages to apply in our development. How to turn our problems into our opportunities. Because quite often our black situation is not as black as we seem to think about it. I like this phrase by Peter Drucker. He said that it's much more productive to turn opportunity into a result than to solve a problem. Because solving a problem always restores the situation of yesterday, isn't it? When we solve some problem, we always come back to where we used to be. If we look at opportunity, we always create something for the future. It's a nice way of thinking. When they say the mind is weak, everything looks like a problem. When mind is balanced, everything looks like a challenge. And when mind is strong, everything seems like an opportunity. If we look at some practical case of development, let's say Irish, I'm not talking about regions here, but more about national dimension. If we look at the Irish case, Ireland has a huge history of constant poverty and emigration. It was like a vicious circle of poverty, economic problems in the country, and always being emigrating to the United States across the Atlantic. The question is, this is a vicious circle, užburtas ratas. Can we look into this situation from the positive perspective? Can we find something positive within at least one side of the problem? And the positive side of this emigration is the huge Irish network which they have across the globe. They call it the Irish power, yes? Power of Irish network in Boston, in New York, in California, even in Asia. They have lots of Irish, which they can use for attracting foreign direct investment into Ireland. And that's what historically Ireland did. They have attracted a lot of FDI in the 1970s, trying to solve the problems of development. Were they successful? Not really as we think they were. In Lithuania, we always mention Irish success story. But it was not so very simple as we try to think about it. In the beginning, in the 1970s, they attracted some companies from the United States. What they have solved by attracting these companies, they improved the employment ratio, the balance of payments, they improved a bit of export growth in the country. What happened next? These huge American multinationals who came to Ireland, they have basically expatriated the profits. Pelnas iškeliaudavo atgal į Ameriką. They were outcompeting the local firms, and over 10 years, the unemployment even grew more than before the FDI. Again, basically, Ireland was in a very similar situation before they started this FDI attraction to the country. It means they always had to rethink the way they are developing the country, because every policy issue has a potential side effect. Increased immigration, once more. So, what they looked at, you know what this is? That's the largest Christian cathedral in the world, in the desert. It is in Ivory Coast. One dictator in Ivory Coast has built the largest cathedral in the desert. It is a small town of 100,000 people, and the biggest Christian cathedral in the world. Quite often we have the same problem in our development, that we try to bring some cathedrals into our desert and to try to think that it will work. In most cases it does not. And the same was the case in Irish development. They have attracted a lot of cathedrals from the United States, but these cathedrals were disconnected from the local context. What was the solution? What they tried to do? They tried to connect these huge multinational firms with the local Irish companies. There were a lot of policy incentives for the Irish firms to grow through the linkages with the advanced multinationals from the United States. So we always have to reassess the situation and rethink, refocus our problem that we have. And to build the linkage between strong and weak so that the weak partner can grow. And that's a very positive thinking in our development mentality. It's about how do we turn this vicious circle into the virtuous circle, from negative feedback loop to positive feedback loop, as the scientists call it. And when I tried to just put it in a colorful way, I was trying to think about the possibility within every vicious circle, and maybe we can gradually go into the positive feedback loop. But it's never a final solution, because every time you achieve something positive, it can also have negative effects over time, isn't it? When we are happy that we solve something, after a while it becomes again a problem of some development. The management professionals call it the success trap. We are sometimes so attracted by our own success that we repeat it over time and then we become a failure. Sometimes it's quite good to fail fast. So I just have like 7 lessons in smart development. There are some phrases which we could look into when we talk about something being smart. First is that strengths and weaknesses are sometimes 2 sides of our coin. And the same things which make us strong can also make us weak. The same things that make us appear weak can also make us strong over time. Lesson number 2. It's very much the smart development about accepting the contradictions. It's not the choice between either or, but it's about both and. I like this phrase by Scott Fitzgerald, you know, the American writer. He said that what's the test of a very intelligent person? It is someone who can contain in his mind 2 opposing ideas and still retain ability to function. You accept that these ideas are contradicting each other, but you manage to put them both into the same situation and make a solution out of that. So when we look at, I'm more into strategic management, we quite often in life have these 4 types of situations. We have situation as a puzzle, which means we analyze something like a Sherlock Holmes, yes? We are a very professional detective and we know how to analyze and we know how to find the best solution. But very often in our policy, it is not the case. We cannot be very over-analytical sometimes. We can analyze the sequences, the outcome after things have happened quite often. But it's very hard to say beforehand when you are making a decision whether it will be fully right or wrong, quite often. Sometimes we have a situation of dilemma, the choice between one or the other. They call it, you cannot be half pregnant, yes? They say, it's not like being half pregnant, it's like either or. And it's nice, but it's still like, you have to choose sometimes. And in regional development as well, you have to know, for example, in Šiauliai or in Kaunas, what we are really good at and what we are just not good at. We're not trying to become Silicon Valley number 2, for example. Because there is already one Silicon Valley, and we're just good at something else, yes? So we sometimes have to say no to some things. Then we have this tension as a trade-off. Čia lietuviškai kompromisas būtų. Trade-off. More or less of something. How to find a balance of something. We cannot have it all, but we can have a bit of this and a bit of that. It's just a question where we put our dot on the line. But the most creative and the most challenging, intellectually and policy-wise situation is when we look at situation as a paradox. When we have to use both extremes to make this problem work out. And when we look at these smart systems, they usually are very good at both aspects. They're very focused, very disciplined, at the same time they're very flexible. They're very much focused on short-term results, and they also have a long-term thinking at the time. They're both stable. Look at Switzerland, for example. It's an extremely stable country. At the same time, it's the most innovative country in the world. On one hand, it has extremely stable and predictable institutional environment. We all know about Swiss bureaucracy, yes? But at the same time, it's the place where innovators thrive. They prosper in this kind of environment as well. I like the case of Israel, if we look at the Israeli case. Israel has an elite technological training program for the military. They get the highest quality professionals in their technology firms from the military training. It's quite a paradox to have people with a military and technological background. It means very well trained, very focused, very disciplined, at the same time being extremely entrepreneurial and seeking very flexible opportunities. They have a program which produces a lot of top-level general directors of the country in technology firms. It means they really have this kind of both-and situation. Lesson number three in smart development. We have to trust our knowledge, but also to recognize the limits of knowledge. And I like this phrase by Donald Rumsfeld, you know, the American the top politician. He said that our world is very much dominated by unknown unknowns. After he invaded Iraq, he said, it's very much about unknown unknowns that we have in life. And you look at this right situation, we don't know many things that we have no idea that we don't know. When we try to make something innovative in life, to find new opportunities, we have no idea about our own limitations. There are many situations in life, like these so-called by black swan events. There are events which happen and we're not prepared for them. We say, oh, they cannot happen. But after some time, they happen, like military crises, they happen, like financial crises, they happen. And who prosper in these kind of uncertain situations? It is the countries, the regions which have already prepared themselves for these potentially uncertain situations. They say that Switzerland, I mean, I'm talking about the Swiss case, for example, is the most prepared country in the world for any kind of emergency which can happen, ever. And they try to look why they are so much prepared. They say it's a country which is very much, it's a dictatorship from the bottom. It was never a dictatorship from the top. We're here in the Conference of Municipalities, yes? So I believe Swiss case is this ideal case when we talk about good municipal governance, yes? There is also a phrase that Switzerland has avoided a lot of big reforms throughout the history. There is a joke. They say, Stalin is never born in the municipality. Stalin or Lenin or no one like this emerges from the municipality. They emerge from the big politics. When you are living the municipality type of mentality in the country, you are very much focused on very clear and very close to people solutions. And you're always prepared to the plan B, plan C. You're not thinking about the big reform, which sometimes spoils more things than it solves. There is, for management, what is smart and what is dumb when we are not quite certain what will happen. We have uncertainty in our environment. The dumb strategy is to invest into something where our potential negative effects will be bigger than positive effects. And the smart way of investing, for example, is when you invest into something, you have no idea if it will work out. But if it will work out, you will have a lot of more positive side to this. I tried to put this kind of picture. Yes, look, that's the cross. And that's the sword, isn't it? If you are doing some decision in which you have more negative side effects than potential positive side effects, you are having a cross. If you make a decision where you have more positive sides, in case it works out, you have a sword in your life. Lesson number 4. We always have to recognize the complexity of the system we are dealing with. And the regions are always complex systems. It's the systems of people, of institutions, and quite often we cannot predict the actual effects of what will come out of it. Some scientists say that we have like rocket science, which we can always predict. It's very complicated. It has a lot of formulas, but it will always be a result that we plan, we can practice, and we can make a perfect result. Dealing with a complex system is a bit like raising a child, yes? Raising a child is not a predictable occupation. The governments are very much about, they say, they're very good in building parks, but they're not very good in building ecosystems. When you have a government, it can plant a park which will always need a constant care. Like we're always building some artificial Silicon Valley in our countries. How much? 5 minutes, yeah. But if we want to make things work, we have to create a system which takes care of itself. We have to create the rules, we have to create the human and social capital which tries to always reinvent itself. It does not come down to one politician being in a certain position or not. We really have to think about the system in such a way. It's always also about thinking where we have to regulate and where we have to leave things to self-regulation. If we look at the analogy in the traffic lights, yes? There are certain situations in our traffic where we have to put clear traffic lights, like a hierarchical solution, a regulatory solution. But there are very nice situations, like say in Dutch or in German small towns, where they basically eliminate all traffic signs. All traffic signs are gone from small towns in the Netherlands. What they create an infrastructure for people to make rational decisions. They say you should trust people that they look into each other's eyes when they are moving, when they are commuting in the town. You create a system where it is basically a self-sustaining system. This is a good phrase. That when we have knowledge, we know that tomato is a fruit. When we have wisdom, we know that we shouldn't put tomato into a fruit salad. So it is not that we always have regulation or self-regulation in our system. It's about knowing when to use which, how much of which, and when not to use it too much. Lesson number 5, some problems, they just get solved by themselves if we apply the right leverage. I like this picture with a big dragon who is attacking the small guy at the bottom. If you use a right leverage, this big dragon can get killed by itself. You don't have to use all your power that you need to fight the dragon. All comes down to this leverage and the way you use it, how professionally you use it. When we look at the development situation, like Matthews, who analyzed the Southeast Asian countries, he saw that Singapore, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and all these latecomer countries, they have caught up because of 3 aspects. First, they created linkage to the top guys in the world. They leveraged, it means they leveraged the resources. They tried to make themselves attractive to these top leaders of the world and learn from them. So the final aspect was learning by applying the right leverage. And this was the flying geese, that they were trying to follow the leading geese in the region so that they can grow together. When we look at today's systems, we can see, for example, China, Germany, and Poland. All these 3 systems are extremely interconnected. Poland has profited a lot from German ecosystem being integrated into the Chinese ecosystem of manufacturing. If we go to Poland, it has a very thriving manufacturing sector, but it wouldn't thrive if it didn't have the necessary connections to Germany, and Germany didn't have the connection to the Chinese industrial system. We always have to think where we are useful and where we can grow. Lesson number 6. Let's be careful about what we wish for. Sometimes we can create negative consequences of our wish. You see, I mean, we solve one situation, but we spoil the other. And lesson number 7, it was the phrase by Mark Twain who said, every generalization is dangerous, even this one. In this case, it is like smart. Every buzzword is dangerous, even this one. When everyone starts using the same buzzword, it gets distorted and it gets used for political purposes. So it's basically used by some interest groups. If we look at this, I'm coming from university, but we all know these 2 people here sitting in the room. If you look at Karl Marx, and if you read everything he wrote, he was absolutely against any oppression by the state. What did happen in practice? All the Marxists, they basically killed Karl Marx. For his ideas were quite different from what were applied in practice. If you look at Adam Smith and all the liberals, you can see that Adam Smith was against any form of economic concentration. What happened? He got killed by libertarians and some neoliberals. So when we look at all this smartness nowadays that surrounds our development, we also have to be very careful not to misuse it. And my final slide, not to waste too much time, is that human nature has a tendency to admire complexity but always rewards simplicity. So we are always stuck in our trap of the human nature, but let's try to avoid it. Thank you very much. Bye.